In this video, we will see how you can create different types of glass, and more specifically, clear glass, frosted glass, tinted, and textured. First, let's set a new camera facing the glass doors of the bathroom. Select this camera and holding the Shift key, drag it. Choose Copy, and let's see the point of view of this camera. Select the target and adjust it. I think we are good here. Let's start with the clear glass. Open the material editor, create a new V-Ray material, and double-click on the node to open the parameters. Let's rename it to clear glass. Let's assign this to our surface. Let me open some reference images for the clear glass. So what are basically its attributes? It is transparent, it has reflections, and it also has some diffuse color. How do we understand the color of a clear glass? By noticing its thickest parts, the darkest parts of the object. So, if you take a look at the glass over here, its color is this dark gray, almost black color, while in this case, it's this color, a medium gray. Let's now put all this info in our material in 3ds Max. Click on the diffuse color and set it to a dark gray, let's say a value of 5. Then click on the reflect color and set it to 230. We have already said that when the reflect color is black, our material is matte. It doesn't reflect. When the reflect color is white, our material is very reflective. And if you slide between the two values, you play with the reflectiveness of your material. Closer to black, your finish will be less reflective, and closer to white, it will be very reflective. Refraction has the same philosophy. When the refraction color is black, our surface is solid. When the refraction color is white, it is fully transparent, and you play with the value between these two to adjust the transparency of your surface. For the clear glass, I set it to 240. Be careful because if you are using V-Ray denoiser, it will make your glass look blurry if you are using low rendering settings. That's why I will set to do 15-minute test renders so that the noise is more reduced and you can understand better the various effects. What we can do in this case is click here to disable V-Ray denoiser so that you can also understand the difference when it is enabled or not. When we disable it, we see the noise of the render, but you see that the glass is clear glass, it's not blurry. When we increase the rendering time and reduce the noise threshold, we won't have any issues. Let's save this in history. Let's now move on to the tinted glass. Let me copy the material we created for the clear glass. To do so, select the material, hold the Shift key and drag the material. Double-click on the node and let's rename it to Tinted Glass and assign it to our surface. Let's see a reference image for the tinted glass. Its attributes are basically the same ones with the clear glass, it's just that the color is more apparent here. How do we give color to our glass? Please notice this reference image. Our glass has two colors, a light one and a dark one. We will put the dark hue, which is this one, in the diffuse color and the light one in the fog color. And more specifically, go to the material editor, go to the basic parameters, click on the diffuse color and set it to 7, 8 and 8, okay? Although the final result here might look like gray, if you check the whiteness, we are in the blue hues. And then go to the fog color and set it to 214, 254, 254, which is a very light blue, almost white color. Let's render. How does fog work? The higher the multiplier, the darker, more solid our color will look. Let's type 5 and render. While the lower the multiplier, the more subtle the color will look. Let's type 0.2 and render one more time. So now it's almost like we have a clear glass, we can barely see the color. That's all with the tinted glass, and now let's continue to the frosted glass. I will copy the tinted glass, rename it to frosted, and apply it to my surface. Let me open a reference image for the frosted glass. So what are the attributes here? It has a diffuse color, it is reflective, and it is transparent, but the reflections and the refraction are blurry. So let's apply all these in our material. We keep all the parameters we have from before and we will right click and go Maps, General and select Noise and connect it to the bump map. Let's see what we get with the default values. Don't get scared by this. What noise does is to make the object behind our surface look distorted. What we need to do is to reduce the scale of the noise. So double click on the noise node to see its parameters and set the size to 1. See how better it looks now? Although it's still not correct, this one looks more like a textured glass than a frosted one. Let's make the size 0.4 and re-render. Let's also reduce the bump effect. From 30% to 5%. Let's disable the denoiser. This is so much better. Let me open another reference for the frosted glass. In this image, we can't understand the objects that are behind the glass panel. How can we achieve that? Through the refractive glossiness. When glossiness here is 1, we can clearly see what is behind our surface. The lower we go, the blurrier the objects will get. Let's make refractive glossiness 0.8 and re-render. We can reduce the size of the noise even more to get closer to the reference image, but keep in mind that the lower the size, the more the rendering time increases. So, since I now have the feeling of a frosted glass, I'd rather leave it like that. Finally, let's see the textured glass. Like we did before, select the clear glass and make a copy of it. Rename it to textured glass and assign it to our surface. Let's open some references for the textured glass. So what attributes do we see here? It has reflections, it is transparent, and it also has a pattern that makes it look three-dimensional. Let's put all this info in 3ds Max. So the textured glass has all the attributes of a clear glass and we only need to add the pattern. To do so, create a V-Ray bitmap and connect it to the bump map. Select a black and white image of the pattern you want your glass to have. Click on the bump map and then click on the Show Shaded Material in Viewport button in order to see how the texture applies to the surface. I can barely see it, and that's because the surface is transparent. What we need to do is to go to the V-Ray material parameters and temporarily make the refraction color black. This way, the material is no longer transparent and we can see the texture. If we need to adjust the size of the texture, go to the coordinates rollout of the V-Ray bitmap and play with the tiling. Now we can go back to the properties of the V-Ray material and get refraction back to 240. Let's render. This is great. I would maybe change the bump value to 5 so that it doesn't look that three-dimensional. Let's try one more pattern. I will go to the bitmap parameters, click here and select another image. Let's render this one as well. That's great. In this video, we will see how we can create metal finishes. We will see 3 different types of metal: stainless steel, gold and copper. First, let's set a new camera and place it over the vase area. Let's create a new V-Ray material and apply it to the flask, the pigalle and the paper holder. Let's start with the stainless steel. So let's rename this new V-Ray material to stainless steel. Let me open a reference image for this metal. So what are basically its attributes? It has a color and it is very reflective. At a first glance, one would say that the stainless steel has a grey color, but that's not the color we will put in 3ds Max. We are interested in two hues here, the darkest color, which we will put in the diffuse, and the lightest color, which we will apply in the reflections. So in this case, the diffuse color of this metal is dark grey, almost black, and the reflections color is white. Let's go to 3ds Max and put these values. Click on the diffuse color and set it to a dark grey, let's say a value of 5. Then click on the reflect color and set it to white. Let me remind you how reflect works. When the reflect color is black, our material is matte, it doesn't reflect. When the reflect color is white, our material gets very reflective. And if you slide between the two values, you play with the reflectiveness of your material. Let's produce a render to see what we get so far. For my testing on the metals, I will set the rendering time to 15 minutes, actually the same as we did for our glass material testing, because here as well we have the same issue. When we have denoiser and use low rendering samples, it will blur the metal. It will blur the metal. So, our bathroom accessories look glossy black and definitely not like stainless steel. What do we need to do now? Let's go back to the parameters. We need to enable the Fresnel IOR by clicking this L button and increase this value. The higher we go, the more reflective our material will get. So let's set it to 8 and re-render. Now we have a stainless steel material. Let me open another reference image. What do we see here? The colors are the same. We have a dark gray here for the diffuse color and a white here for the reflect color. But our reflections in this example are not clear, they are not sharp. How can we make them blurry? By adjusting the reflective glossiness. The lower we go, the blurrier our reflections will get. Let's set it to 0.8 and render. That's great. Let me repeat it one more time because it's important. If you are using V-Ray denoiser along with low resolution rendering settings, your metal will look blurrier. So when we have metal finishes as our focal point, at the end we need to increase the rendering settings to have smooth surfaces. Let me take one more look to the reference image. So what we also notice here is some, let's say, scratches, like this metal is brushed. How do we put this info in 3ds Max? First, let's Google brushed metal bump map. Save one of these photos that resembles the scratches we have. Let's say this one. Go back to 3ds Max and open the material editor. Create a V-Ray bitmap and connect it to the bump map and load the image we downloaded from the web. Hit the associated material in viewport to see how it applies on the objects. You can play with the tiling of the V-Ray bitmap if you want to reduce or increase the size. Let's render. This is good, but I'd prefer if the scratches didn't look that three-dimensional. So what we need to do is go to the materials parameters, scroll down, open the maps tab, and reduce the bump value to 5%. This is now great. I believe we have covered everything on stainless steel, so let's move on the gold material. And let's open a reference image. The philosophy is exactly the same. We will put the darkest color, which is a dark brown, on the diffuse color, and the lightest color, which is a light yellow, to the reflect color. Our material has blurred reflections and it's brushed. So let's go back to 3ds Max, click on the diffuse color and set it to 17, 7 and 3. Then go to the reflect color and set it to 206, 160 and 88. All the other parameters remain the same. Let's render. Let me open the reference image and put them side by side. I would like my metal to get more reflective, so let me go to the IOR and increase it, let's say, to 20. Let's also see one more reference image for another gold. This one is more glossy and more yellow. Lastly, let's see the copper finish. Let's open a reference image. I have selected a brushed copper. The philosophy is the same for all metals. So let's go to the diffuse color and set it to 9, 4 and 2. And go to the reflect color and set it to 123, 85, 57. I will set glossiness to 0.7 since our reflections are pretty blurry, and set IOR to 8 since this metal isn't very reflective. Let's render. I believe we're good. If we want to convert this metal to a glossy one, just disable the bump map and set glossiness to 1, like we did before. I hope now that I made it clear for you how you need to adjust the glossiness, the IOR, and the diffuse and reflect colors in order to achieve any type of metal.